Moving on, we have our next session, Unlocking the Potential of APAC Blockchain Landscape, Insights into Trends, Building Strategies, and Investment and Funding Opportunities. So we will be joined, I'm not quite sure if we have everyone on board yet, but we will be joined by Leah Callon-Butler, Director at Emfarsis, Andrew Vranjes, VP of Sales, GM APAC at Blockdaemon. I just never really quite know which way to say that. Alex Sims, Member of Executive Council Blockchain New Zealand, Simon Keeling, Director Emerging Companies, Growth and Advisory at PwC, and Annie Yong, General Manager at Chainup, will be joining us shortly. Okay, so, well, what I will do is I'm just going to let Leah and Simon get the ball rolling. The other panelists no doubt will join you shortly. I think Andrew's just popped in. Yeah, I'll leave you to it. And thank you so much for joining us for 2023.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy Rose. Hi, everybody. I'm Leah, in case we haven't met before. And I'm joining you from the Philippines today. I'm very excited to be moderating this discussion, which is taking a regional perspective on APAC and how Australia fits into the growth potential of this region, which I think is such a pertinent conversation to be having right now, because I think a lot of crypto companies around the world, and indeed within our own region, are thinking about where they're going to basically set up home. So we're going to dig into that today. I just wanted to point out before we get started, I mean, this is going to be an extremely diverse discussion. I mean, APAC itself, how do you define it at all? It's a patchwork quilt of cultures, languages, regulatory climates. There's a lot to unpack there. And today we're also going to be looking at the topic of Web3, which is almost even more difficult to define. So there's a lot to cover. But what we thought we'd do, I guess, to narrow it down a little bit, we wanted to focus on a topic that I think a lot of people are grappling with, which is how to successfully move from Web 2 to Web 3. And with our speakers that we've got today, we all come from different places across the region. We thought we could share perspectives from where we are working locally and those kind of local experiences, but also across our different verticals. So that's what we're going to hone in on today. But perhaps before we dive straight into it, let's just do a quick round of introductions. I'll start. So my name's Leah Callon-Butler. I'm the Director of Emfarsis. We're an investment and advisory firm, and we specialize in communications. That's our real expertise. And we invest in early stage Web3 startups. So some of them you might have heard of, like Yield Guild Games or YGG, Breeder DAO, Finblocks, a whole range of them. You can check them out at our website. I'm Aussie, as you can probably tell by my accent, but I actually live in the Philippines and I've been here for the past 5 years. Who wants to go first? Do you want to go next, Andrew?
Yeah, sure, Leah. Thanks a lot. So Andrew, I'm Australian. I'm a bit over 12 years in Singapore now. So it's been a minute. I got back to Australia a month before last. It was great. Yeah, so, and I run a company called Blockdaemon. So Blockdaemon is one of the largest players on the institutional side of things. So we're B2B. We support very large crypto native, very large digital native, and I think we'll get into that sort of discussion today, and very large institutions that want to use public protocols and blockchains, etc. So I look after everything APAC, and that always, you know, can have a put and take, as Leah said, on the country, what's in and what's out, right? So I think we'll have that sort of conversation as well today. And thanks for having us. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Thanks, Andrew. Simon, did you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Leah. Hi, everyone. I'm Simon Keeling. I'm a director at PwC, the accountancy firm, and I lead our emerging companies team. I've been in Sydney for about 6 years, but originally from the UK. Worked in London for 10 years, but from Manchester in the Northwest. So the emerging companies team is our growth strategy team for early stage businesses. It's all about helping them understand what that growth opportunity looks like, and then we also help them prepare for and raise capital as well. We work across all sectors, but it's usually tech, disruption, anything exciting in inverted commas, and quite a bit of that at the moment is in Web3.
Nice, thanks. So far we've got an Aussie in the Philippines, an Aussie in Singapore, a Brit in Australia. And Annie, do you want to go next?
Sure. So, hi everyone, I'm Annie. Annie Ong, the General Manager of Chainup Private Limited. Chainup is actually a global end-to-end blockchain technology solution provider founded in 2017 with headquarters in Singapore. This is exactly where I'm based out of. We have served more than 1,000 clients across 30 countries, reaching over 60 million end users. And I'm responsible for managing Chainup Group's global sales team, focusing on financial service and other key industries. Before Chainup, I have held multiple regional sales management or business strategy leadership roles at multinational technology companies like IBM, Oracle, and Salesforce. I'm very glad to join these panel discussions today.
Excellent. Thanks, Annie. We do have Alex, who's she's going to be joining us from New Zealand, but I haven't seen her coming yet, but that's fine. We'll quickly introduce her if she manages to join us a little bit later. So let's dive straight in. So we were going to talk about this big transition from Web 2 to Web 3. And I wanted to perhaps focus on these obstacles that we're seeing to growth and adoption. You know, that's something that I think I've heard ad nauseum, but I'd love to hear it from this kind of local perspective, from these different geographic contexts that each of you are positioned in. Annie, it was your idea to hone in on this topic. Do you want to kick us off? Like, maybe tell us, like, what is it like in your world in terms of helping people do this big move from Web 2 to Web 3?
Sure. I think since you mentioned about the obstacle itself, I will actually highlight 3 key areas that we've seen. These are the key barriers that I see happening in our regions. First of all, is related to the diverse regulatory framework. Most countries in APAC, actually, they have been actively working on a regulatory framework for blockchain and digital assets. Ended up, there are varying levels of regulations within the regions, and therefore navigating through these regulations frameworks can be complex and time-consuming for organizations who are looking to adopt Web3 technologies. In addition, as the technology evolves rapidly, keeping up with these regulatory requirements and ensuring compliance can be a challenge. Therefore, continuous dialogue and collaborations between regulators and industry stakeholders are critical to overcome this challenge. I would use one of the bank in Singapore, DBS Bank, as an example. They operate in multiple countries across ASEAN and APAC region, and each country has their own regulatory landscape. In order to address this challenge, DBS Bank has actively engaged with regulators in various jurisdictions to ensure compliance with respective local regulation itself. So that was the first point. The second point I think I wanted to highlight is another challenge will be raising of awareness and educating stakeholders about the potential benefits and use case of Web3. Many organizations may not fully understand the concepts behind blockchain or decentralized technologies, making it so important that to invest in educational initiatives to bridge this knowledge gap. I will be using DBS Bank as an example as well, how they have been doing it. They have actually launched initiatives such as DBS Blockchain Academy to provide education and training on blockchain technology. They offer workshops, seminars, and even courses to help both individual and business to understand blockchain concepts, use case, and implementation strategy. So they are trying their best way to bridge this gap itself. The last point I probably wanted to highlight regarding the obstacle is related to talent and skill development. Building a skilled workforce with expertise in Web3 technology is important for adoptions. This requires investment in training programs and initiatives to attract and retain the talent in the blockchain field. Some countries have been taking steps to address this by promoting blockchain educations and providing opportunity for professionals to upskill. I will take one example at UAE, which is Emirates MBD. They actually has initiated partnership with leading university and education institutions to offer blockchain-focused programs and courses. And of course, I can't forget Australia. So in Australia, most of the financial institutions, they have intention to expand their digital asset business, but only those who can attract relevant resources and talents are able to have a good understanding, study of regulations, plus conduct deep dive study into retail and institutional use case. And eventually they can uncover feasible one for them to deploy. even with this case itself, they often have a specific requirement that cannot be met by existing blockchain technology platform. Many custom development and POC are therefore required as a result. And therefore, it actually enforces again how important having a relevant talents and resources within the regions to promote blockchain is so important.
Incredibly comprehensive overview, Annie. That was amazing. We've got the problem with that patchwork quilt of different regulatory frameworks. We've got the issues with raising awareness and educating and onboarding. I'd add to that problems with talent and skill. Simon, what do you think? What's your take? Would you add anything to that list? What's holding us back from adoption?
Yeah, one of the observations I've seen from coming from the UK to Australia is there's been an increased focus on pathway or urgency to commercialization as well of projects, which I've not seen in other geographies. And I think that's driven by, well, naturally from investors, but also just project teams, the regulator as well, and wanting to see what the end goal of projects looks like, where I think in other geographies, I've seen less of that, or it's been slower. They've been able to focus more on understanding what the tech is, the development of it, and letting the commercialization come a little bit later. And yeah, keen to kind of get the panel's thoughts on that if they've seen that in other areas of APAC.
Yeah, did anyone want to respond to that? I think that's super interesting. Commercialization or just focusing on R&D and getting the tech right first?
I think I'll take the tech piece. So, as I said, Blockdaemon's, market leader at the blockchain infrastructure space. So I think Annie and Simon have done a great job of kind of laying out the canvas. I think if I can go a bit more specifically, where we work on this Web 2 to Web 3 transition, I can talk about two examples. The first example may be, for example, something I think you're a bit familiar with, Leah, which is more in the blockchain gaming space. So the example would be, a large, well-known, reputable gaming company that knows they need to come into blockchain gaming, actually has the gaming know-how, actually has a fair idea of what they want to do, but wants the ability to explore different blockchains fairly quickly before making a final decision, because they kind of know once they've made that actual blockchain decision, that's fairly much a one-way door. You can undo it, but you probably want to get that right at the start. So for example, we've got one specific product, Universal API. It's really designed for Web 2 companies. We've got companies like PayPal that use this API, and they can use the same command syntax across 19 different blockchains, start to build their application and use case, not completely tie themselves down to a specific chain until they really work out, what's the right blockchain for their use case. So I think from a technology perspective, we fit at that layer of, this overall canvas. And those are the sort of conversations we've been having, whether it's a very large traditional gaming company, it's a fintech, or even a very well-established enterprise company. Sometimes there's a little bit of hesitation on, picking which protocol is their best for their use case. And we try to make that part of the overall canvas a little bit easier.
Yeah, that is such a critical decision. And I see a lot of companies just going for, whoever's dishing out grants or, who someone else said is the right one to go for now, but they haven't really considered the actual application, whether it's going to suit them. GM Alex, we were just chatting about struggles with achieving adoption in Web 3, but specifically when moving over from Web 2. Did you want to quickly introduce yourself as well?
Yes, sorry. Apologies for being late. I'm just having a week from hell. I'm sorry. So I'm sorry. I'm Alex Sims. I'm a academic at the University of Auckland. So I'm the token New Zealander on the call. And I'm a member of the Executive Council of Blockchain NZ. So in terms of sort of the move from Web 2 to Web 3, we're a little bit similar to Australia. And part of the issue is regulators, okay, not understanding this. And if you don't understand something, it's a lot easier just to push it away. So we've had a number of businesses having to locate overseas, incorporate overseas. So it's a little bit similar to to Australia. So we're not as proactive in attracting people or retaining people in New Zealand.
Yeah, that's very similar to what Annie was saying as well, I think. So I think that's a very common experience. Hey, one thing I just wanted to sort of tack on to the end of this conversation, Simon, you had some really interesting ideas about funding in particular, and the challenges in projects being able to access that capital that they need in order to thrive. How are you seeing that sort of fit into this conversation?
Yeah, it's been a real roller coaster of a year or year and a half, really, from what we've seen. We kicked off. Let's focus on calendar year. We kicked off January and everything was off. Capital markets were closed, and that really filtered down. On the back of that, we're seeing tech valuations and prices crashing as well. And again, that has the knock-on effect to the scale-up, startup, early stage space as well, which inherently Web3 sits in. Then February, March came around and we were back on again. The markets were open, investors were looking for things. Strangely, that was followed by what we saw was a bit of, I think, tire kicking, really. Investors saying they're interested, but no real traction. And now I think, coming from an Australia perspective, end of financial years closing, and they want to, try and get some deals done. So it's, back on again. Even last week, we started hearing news that global VCs pulling out of Australia, and that, although it made, it made the news, it's still to really see what that means. And I think from a Web3 perspective, I don't necessarily see that being a big issue. I think Australia is great for Web3 businesses, but inherently Web3 is global anyway. So we're not necessarily targeting those VCs who are just looking for Australian businesses. I think it will impact definitely a lot of businesses in the startup sector, but I don't see that as much as an alarm bell for Web3. That said, I think, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to quickly, Denise Tambanis had a question specifically for you, which is on this. So I just sort of quickly read it for you. She wanted to know, do you think the focus on commercialization is due to investors and companies being more risk averse in Australia, or is it just to this relative lack of VC funding for startups being a problem for Australia?
Yeah, I think we've definitely seen a kind of a more increased focus on pathway to profitability from investors across the whole spectrum. They don't need to be profitable now, but how are you in the future going to make that profit? Or what's the commercialization model behind your go-to-market? And I think that's what really stood out for me across different geographies being different. And I think it is that risk appetite being driven down across the different markets and the different segments. But end of the day, there's got to be a way of generating a return, whatever that looks like, I think, through these projects. So I think it's a valid question. I think it does answer that risk appetite.
Did anyone want to?
One comment from my side. I think having the benefit of seeing a bit of the venture community in Australia and also Singapore, I think one thing that the Australian ecosystem can have a look at is the way Singapore's welcomed the venture capital community, whether it's Web 2, Web 3, early stage, late stage, and effectively seeded a bunch of them as well. Back in the day. And I think that, drives a bigger community of more investors in the region. And I think that's ultimately, therefore, then helpful for founders, entrepreneurs, projects, but just because there's more density of investors. So I think there is some lessons learned for Australia out of the Singapore model. They started this model really on the Web 2 side of things, but then, quickly they were able to attract the Web 3 investors to kind of either set up or at least have a partner level person like in the country. So I think there's a lot of benefits that have been seen from the region from that. Yep.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Alex, did you want to add anything to the funding discussion? Otherwise, I've got lots of other questions.
We're seeing the same thing in New Zealand with the funding falling off. I mean, people are looking at things before, sort of anything that moved would have money thrown at it, not now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess we all go through these cycles. I was thinking what you were saying, Simon, too, about Web3 being global. I mean, there's been some incredible blockchain gaming, as Andrew mentioned, success stories from Australia. I remember thinking, teams behind Zrun and even Immutable, just talking to people around the world, they had no idea that this was an innovation that was coming out of Australia. So I think that's a good thing, because obviously it's reducing those kind of geographic barriers, whether they're real or imagined. But yes, absolutely. How do we sort of attract more of this support within the local areas is going to be really important to build those ecosystems like you were talking about, Andrew. So another thing that Annie touched on was talent. So I guess, again, in thinking about how do you build these communities, build these ecosystems, how are you guys approaching this challenge of being able to attract top talent? I'd be particularly interested to know too, like, are you finding the right people come from within the region, or are you having to hire from outside, whether it's Europe or US or so on? Who wants to tackle that one?
I'll go.
Sure.
Just talking with people, it's difficult. It's really difficult to get good talent. I mean, it's yeah, I don't know. We aren't producing enough, and also the issue we have in New Zealand is the wages aren't high enough. So if you're very good, you can go overseas. But also, yes, we can work remotely, but it's not the same as having boots on the ground.
Yeah. And so I've got a slightly different view, and I think I think the talent in Australia, whether we're talking on the business side or on the technical side, is fantastic. I think though that a lot of that talent is moving around, and is less country bound, more so than ever. So I think I see a lot of talent coming out of Australia. I see, but also a lot of talent in Asia as well. But there is pockets, very specific pockets. I see a lot of blockchain engineering talent, for example, out of Korea and India as well on the engineering side. And then you see different cohorts of talent pools across APAC. I think it's all there, but the challenge and the trick for leaders is to put it all together. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe just to add on, I think the reason why there was two different views is actually the point that I also wanted to highlight, that actually is a diverse talent pool among the APAC regions. So the reasons for that is because APAC itself, they have actually a very strong emphasis on technology and innovation. Therefore, they probably promote countries like Singapore, Australia, Japan, and even South Korea. They have been at the forefront of blockchain adoption, then resulting that there is a growing numbers of skilled professionals in this field. And that's why when we are in this country, then we probably see that, hey, we probably have a better pool of talents compared to other countries. I mean, in Australia, take a very particular example, university and educational institutions in the cities like Sydney and Melbourne, they offer blockchain related courses and programs. So we have the talent starting from school, they are producing the university are producing a steady supply of skilled professionals. And the other point also will be leveraging on this point is there is some emerging blockchain hubs coming up within some of the city, and these are with the government support. So this city will be examples like Singapore, Hong Kong, Sydney, and even Seoul. They have emerged as thriving blockchain hubs with the government support, and therefore they can attract more talents and fostering a more vibrant ecosystem within the city. So this hub will offer opportunities for collaborations, networking, and even knowledge sharing among the blockchain professionals. So I think that's how we see that why there was actually a difference between the two. It might be.
Did anyone want to respond to that? No, all good.
I'll just so quickly, I'll respond very quickly. Yeah, and to your point, and is that for example, most of our universities aren't training people up in this area, which is, yeah, to your point. And so and that shows.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I guess talking about this sort of this local support that we need in terms of training and education too, dovetails very nicely into this next question. Really want to ask about your approach to partnerships, because I think this transition to Web3, it really requires a lot of coordination, collaboration, And it's with, a whole range of different stakeholders. So we've talked about educational institutions, we've talked about governments and regulators, but there's other organisations too. You might be sort of thinking about other people within the industry to connect with. I'd love to understand how you're thinking about that from a regional perspective. Anyone got any maybe anecdotes or stories to share about how you partnered with people, whether it's locally, regionally, internationally, to be able to build your own presence?
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, no, please, Annie, you can go after you.
No worry, Andrew, after you.
Okay. Yeah. So I think yeah, sure. So I think at Blockdaemon we do all of the above. I think at at a global level, probably the best analogy is we're very close to about 60 odd protocols, and we work with them on a range of activities. For example, we've worked with the A-Star protocol, who are very strong in Japan. The CEO is Japanese, Sota Watanabe. So he's like, look, I don't need any help here, Andrew. Like, I know this market, but we'd love to do some activities in other markets with you, and we've done some, some AMAs and joint business development type opportunities in the US, for example. So I think definitely at the protocol layer, there's an opportunity to think globally, and we do a lot of that. I think also then, we work with some of the largest exchanges. So that's then very much sort of like, what's their regulatory scope? Usually it's country bound. So then you're talking to them at the country level, and you get into very country specific nuances and discussions as well. And then, so I think they're probably two good examples, I think, about, how do you switch gears from, global, country, cohort, all of these discussions. So I think, Blockdaemon, we're kind of context switching all the time on these topics. Yeah.
Sure. So on my end, some of the example I wanted to share where we actually working in this area. So there was actually two parts that probably we can look into. One is regarding the industry collaborations. The other one is engaging with the government agency. So from industry collaboration perspective, as I will start with that, Chainup actually has participated in blockchain and future of IP ecosystem roundtable organized by Intellectual Property Office of Singapore, IPOS in short. This is just one of the example. And in this roundtable, they are actually discussing many three areas like the transformation potential of blockchain applications and how this enables or opportunity for new or existing IP activities, plus what is the benefit towards the Singapore IP ecosystem and in maintaining Singapore's positions to be the IP hub in alignment with Singapore IP Strategy 2030. So we participated in roundtables like this to discuss, to influence, contribute our points and influence the directions and the roadmaps of some of these influential organizations within the country like Singapore. Also, Chainup, we have actually jointly developed real-world asset tokenization use case and even conduct POC together with our prospect of STO, Security Token Offering Platform, in MAS, Monetary Authorizations of Singapore, in their sandbox environment. So all this effort is to help validate the values of Web3 technologies. And not only that, we also work with so this is from the industry collaboration perspective. Then the other areas I wanted to touch on is related to how we work together with the government agency and contributing to this area. So Chainup also jointly developing anti-money laundering solutions for Web3 together with Nanyang Technology University of Singapore, NTU, and Cyber Security Agency of Singapore, CSA. So this is a government agency. Chainup being the key technology partner, we are providing our Know Your Transaction, KYD technology and expertise to this trustworthy AI Center initiative, which aim to facilitate AML approaches. Lastly, I think we also work with another university in Singapore, which is the National University of Singapore. So we have partnered with NUS Business School to provide our MPC technology and jointly develop an innovative NFT wallet. So this NFT will be offered as a reward securely to EMBA alumni and students who have attended the NUS EMBA masterclass before. And this initiative will not only demonstrate our commitment to foster innovation and supporting the professional growth in the community, this also actually promoting the innovative path, both from just now we talk about the talents perspective, and right now it's the collaborations within government and even educational institutions.
I think that's amazing that you're all doing this legwork to really help sort of establish these connections and get these partnerships going. I often see this at these early stages of the industry too. It's got to be those people who are forward thinking that go out and make this work happen. You know, you can't just sort of sit around and wait for someone else to do it. There's some great chat happening in the little chat box over here. I just wanted to share a little anecdote. Denise followed up to say that she developed the crypto finance undergrad and graduate courses at RMIT, probably over 1,000 students who are keen to work in the industry. And she's saying she's looking for jobs that are available for students all the time, but interestingly, never seen any government jobs for blockchain or crypto students. And she's sort of saying, you know, like if we actually want to see this expertise across governments and regulators, then we really should be looking at ways to be able to bring these passionate and skilled people into that space. So thank you, Denise. I thought that was a really great point. I think we're coming up to the top of our session. I think we were going to have like a really quick chat about decentralization, but I feel like that's almost a topic all on its own. Maybe we can try and tackle it very quickly if anyone's got some passionate ideas about it. The thoughts behind this, in terms of this, you know, transitioning to a decentralized future, we're sort of seeing decentralized happen on a spectrum. And, you know, there's a lot of sort of CeFi entities now that are very much centralized, but calling themselves blockchain. And then we've got other things on the other side of the scale that, you know, are trying to operate as DAOs, but they've got all of their own pros and cons as well. So I was wondering, you know, in terms of the Asian region, or the APAC region more specifically, what are the perspectives to decentralization here? You know, like are people sort of saying that we should be doing this progressively, let's not rush it, or people are saying we're not decentralized enough? Would love to hear your thoughts on that if you've sort of had any, you know, direct relation to this conversation. Alex, I know DAOs are your sweet spot. Do you want to kick us off?
I'll be very brief because I could rant on for hours. Right, is that people say they're decentralized and people say that they're operating DAOs, and there's a lot of people on this call. No, that's not. They're not. It's just marketing hype. Decentralization is not new. Okay, it's been going for thousands of years, but it's really, 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 really difficult. And also, I think some people want the benefits and not the disadvantages. So if you really do have a truly decentralized system, you're not calling the shots. And so when I talk with people and explain it, they go, maybe baby steps. So
yeah. I might hop in and let's look at a slice of this kind of, you know, question. And you know, what we know of Blockdaemon is validators, you know. So I think when we're talking with projects and protocols, we like to see a very diverse set of people running validators, from the institutional folk like a Blockdaemon to your specialist, you know, partners, even to, you know, you just some of your, you know, major personal kind of people that are backing and supporting your project. So that's one thing we look at. That's a really important piece of the blockchain, to make sure there's a lot of provider diversity, partner decentralization, people running the validators in different geographical regions on different hardware platforms. Like, we like to see a very healthy mix. But, you know, when the protocols talk to us, we're like, look, why don't you start with 20? Once that works, you can make that 40. You don't need to go from 0 to 1,000 straight away. But as long as you keep maturing that, you'll end up with a really healthy, viable, vibrant, resilient blockchain that's always processing transactions. So I think we have this conversation a lot with protocols. Some of them have, we think, too little amount of validator set, and some of them are the opposite. They're trying to get to a really, really large number very quickly. So, you know, everyone's a different phase and pace on this as well. Yeah.
Very interesting.
I think just a quick one, just to chip in and mirror what Alex was saying. I think something that doesn't get talked about enough is controls and governance, as an instead of a DAO. You know, you can mirror or set up a business in a way where it acts similar to a DAO with other controls and processes in place. Doesn't get enough airtime in my mind.
Yes. So probably just one point to add on. I mentioned a little bit about security token offering just now. So I thought this is actually a very common use case that the financial institutions in this part of the region is looking into from their blockchain or decentralized initiative. So basically what is security token offering is just tokenization of real world asset. And I thought to share a few examples and what are the financial institutions is doing in the regions, you know, to validate that they are really looking into this. So in Singapore, start with Singapore, where I'm based out of. So DBS Bank, they have actually ventured into the issuance of digital bond using blockchain technology. Back in even 2020, they already collaborate with a multinational company, Olam International, to issue a digital bond on the Ethereum blockchain. So this bond issuance demonstrated the potential of blockchain in streamlining the bond issuance process and enriching transparency for investor. And a very recent news, just in this year, Bank of China International, BOCI, is the investment banking subsidiary of Bank of China at Hong Kong. So BOCI, they are a leading Chinese bank with a full suite of services, and they have actually partnered with UBS Tokenize, that's actually a company name, to tokenizing structured notes on Ethereum as well. And this is the first time a Chinese financial institution has issued tokenized securities on public blockchain at Hong Kong. So I thought that was something interesting to share. And of course, lastly, you know, related back in Australia, with the ongoing push, you know, for CBDCs by the central bank at Australia, we see that there will be key areas, transformational areas like foreign exchange payment, retail and institutional trading platform, and even tokenization using CBDC instead of some of them. They would think that is very risky using a small capital tokens. So these are the trends that I'm seeing, you know, from tokenization, blockchain, you know, or even decentralization initiative perspective.
Danny? Unfortunately, I think we are right at time. I'm so impressed that we managed to cover so much in 35 minutes because I think the takeaway from this is there's really no silver bullet. There are so many moving parts that make something a regional hub for so many different types of players. Before we do go, Amy Rose, I just want to drop something on the chat for everyone. I don't know if you saw it, but CoinDesk just recently published their top 10 global crypto hubs. And interestingly, only 2 spots in APAC made it on the list, which is Singapore and Seoul. Yatsu, who's the chairman of Animoca Brands, has responded saying, don't overlook Tokyo or Hong Kong. So I just thought that was a really interesting thing to take away. You know, if this is going to become an annual thing, how do we get Australia on that list next year? Something to think about. But thank you so much, Amy Rose. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Leah, Andrew, Alex, Simon, and Annie. That was wonderful. That was deep, and you did cover everything, really. So well done. We are off to a break now for Blockchain Week 2023. We will be returning at 1:20 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So that's around about an hour from now. So tune in. And up next, we have a few. Well, we're still in the APAC region, but focusing up next on the Australian AML CTF standards with Stephen Pettigrove, Paul Durham from Holly Nethercote, John Basilius from Hall & Wilcox, who are hosting us here at Blockchain Week Day 4, and Louisa Zhu who is the Senior Legal Counsel at Australian Payments Plus. And Stephen Pettigrove, who is the moderator, I didn't say that he's actually from Piper Alderman. So tune in an hour from now, or around about 50 minutes from now after the lunch break, and we will continue with Blockchain Week Day 4.